Hey guys, for today's video we're moving on to talking about the Dodge Avenger, looking at the history, major flaws of the car, why it got cancelled, and the fact that there is a zombie car still somehow being sold in 2018, even though there are supposed to be none left. So the first video I did like this was for the Dodge Dart, and you guys liked that one a lot and asked for the Avenger next, so here it is. So in these videos, the first part focuses on looking back at the history of the car, and then we jump to talking about the events that led to the car being cancelled and any flaws it had. So for the Avenger, we begin back in 1994. Even though this video mainly focuses on the new Avenger sedan that we saw from 2007 to 2014, the Avenger was actually introduced as a two-door coupe in North America in 1994 for the 1995 model year and was built until 2000. This was a joint venture between Chrysler Corporation and Mitsubishi Motors, where Chrysler had sold part of their equity stake to Mitsubishi, and the car was built on a version of the Mitsubishi Galant platform, with a wheelbase of 103.7 inches and front-wheel drive. The car was designed to replace the Dodge Daytona for Chrysler as well. There were only two models, a Highline base version and the better ES version, and the powertrain was split between two manufacturers. So there was a 2-liter 4-cylinder making 140 horsepower and 130 pound-feet of torque from Chrysler, and there was also a 2.5-liter V6 making 155 horsepower and 161 pound-feet of torque that was designed by Mitsubishi. And they also made the 4-speed auto, and then Chrysler made the optional 5-speed manual. And the car was cancelled after 2000 and replaced with the Dodge Stratus Coupe in 2001. So they stopped making this car for a few reasons. The price was not bad, starting at roughly $17,600, and the fuel economy with the V6 was decent, rated at 18 city and 26 highway. However, the car weighed 3,084 pounds, and the V6 was very underpowered, so the car had no performance to match the sporty looks. So the Highline had a 0 to 60 of just 9.9 seconds, and the ES could do it in 9.2 seconds. And there was also reliability issues, some engines blowing up, and low sales, reaching only 36,000 units at its peak. So enough about that, let's move on to the newer Avenger. After a long hiatus, the Avenger nameplate returned in September 2006 at the Paris Motor Show when Dodge announced the Dodge Avenger concept car. This would go into production a few months later in February 2007 and was available for 2008 to replace the Dodge Stratus. Again, this car was the result of some collaboration between different companies, so the platform it was built on, JS, was shared between Daimler Chrysler and Mitsubishi Motors again, based off the Mitsubishi GS. This was a bold introduction for Dodge and they appeared to have a new hit. The Avenger had aggressive Dodge styling, innovative interior features, very high safety testing scores, solid performance, and good fuel economy too. On the outside, the Avenger looked a bit like its bigger Charger brother, with similar body lines but ultimately smaller. The car gets the signature Dodge crosshair grille in chrome and aggressive headlights up front, giving it a pretty sinister appearance. The side of the car shares the same type of body curves that are found on the Charger, and there are some wider flares above the wheels and tires to give it a meaner look, and those tires were 215/55 18s. The rear of the car is slightly elevated and there's a stylish body color spoiler that doesn't overdo it, along with chrome dual exhaust tips for some of the V6 models, and we'll get to powertrain in a minute. As for the interior, you can find the same kind of thing as most of the other mid-2000 Dodge products, basic, full of cheap plastics, but I have to say this one was also quite functional with a ton of awesome features. Marketing and communication executives also bragged about the Avenger's new technologies, and this was another major selling point of the car. So for example, there was a chill zone, which was a storage compartment on the passenger side dashboard on top of the glove box that came standard on all the early models. As the name suggests, you could chill up to 4-ounce cans down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the cold air would stay in there as long as you kept the compartment door closed. The cup holders were also cooled and heated to keep drinks warm, so that could heat as warm as 140 degrees Fahrenheit or as cool as 35. Onto the powertrain, there were several engines offered for different models. I'll summarize the engine specs and fuel economy in a chart on screen, and the base engine was a 2.4-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder that was called the World Engine, and this was a joint project between Chrysler, Mitsubishi, and Hyundai. There were two optional V6s, which started with the 2.7-liter V6 that had 189 horsepower and 191 pound-feet of torque, and the top-end models got the 3.5-liter V6, which made quite a difference, bumping output to 235 horsepower and 232 pound-feet of torque. The bottom two engines were paired with a 4-speed auto, while that 3.5 came with a 6-speed auto with auto stick. The Avengers that were exported overseas into Europe also got a 2-liter and 2-liter diesel option. There was quite a big difference between an Avenger SE and an RT all-wheel drive, and the all-wheel drive was actually just about as fast as a V6 Charger at the time. There were 4 models available: SE, SXT, RT, and RT all-wheel drive. This was Dodge's first mid-size car to offer all-wheel drive, and that all-wheel drive would cost you $2,000 extra on top of the standard front-wheel drive RT. The system is usually front-wheel drive, so that's 95% power to the front wheels, but the all-wheel drive system will automatically kick in to prevent wheel spin, even if you're on loose gravel roads. It's also used on dry pavement between the speeds of 25 to 65 miles per hour, so basically when you're mashing the gas pedal to give you better performance. And also it gives better traction for snow and ice surfaces as well, on demand, giving power to the rear wheels when needed. Other than Canada and the US, the Avenger was offered in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, but it was pulled from Europe in 2011 due to extremely low sales. So that brings us to 2011. Once again, Dodge gets really confusing with all the models offered, so for 2011 only, Dodge tried to switch up things by calling models by the name of Express, Lifestyle, Main Street, Heat, Luxe, and RT. But this clearly wasn't a great strategy and confused buyers, so for 2012 they went back to SE, SXT, SXT Plus, and RT for the model names. And on a quick side note, the RT all-wheel drive was cut after 2009. The Avenger was much improved in every aspect. The exterior got the updated Dodge split crosshair grille with a honeycomb texture behind it, and there was a more aggressive lower fascia and projector fog lights. The rear fascia also looked much better, with nice body lines and circular LED taillights that looked really awesome, especially at night. The interior was totally revamped, with a new instrument panel, bezels, 3-spoke steering wheel, soft touch materials, and comfortable cloth and leather seats. Performance also got a big upgrade. The 4-cylinder World engine did stick around, but it got an optional 6-speed auto along with the old 4-speed. The new engine was a 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 with a best-in-class 283 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. This engine was optional on most models, but it did come standard on the RT, propelling the car to a 0 to 60 of 6.1 seconds and a quarter mile of 14.5 seconds. The car was also 1 inch wider, with 10mm added to the width of the tires, and it was lowered 12mm up front and 6mm in the rear. The suspension was also fully redesigned, resulting in less body roll, better handling, and overall a more aggressive stance. But after doing all this research on the car, I can clearly see it has a lot of strengths and was a pretty good fit for the mid-size sedan segment. However, in early 2014, Chrysler announced that the Dodge Avenger would be cancelled, alongside the Chrysler 200 convertible. The final model year for the Avenger was 2014, and then it was gone. So this brings us to the next part of the video, looking at the reasoning for the cancellation and the flaws. In this case, the flaws I talk about are mostly not referring to the car, but the flaws surrounding the decision making from Chrysler. I also want to look at why some people call this car a zombie car, since it continued to have sales until last year, 2018, on the down low. So the first reason the Dodge Avenger got the axe would be because Dodge did not want overlapping products in the showrooms. Spokespeople refer to this as sister vehicles, which basically means that there are 2 or more cars that are part of a similar segment, and they aren't very differentiated from each other. For Dodge, that would refer to the Avenger and the new Dart, which was introduced for the 2013 model year. The Dart was newer and thus more exciting, and FCA wanted to push sales for that car. However, the Avenger was priced very similarly, and you get a lot more power than the Dart if you got the 3.6-liter V6, so this meant that it was cutting into the sales of the Dart. So to prevent this cannibalization, Dodge wanted to cut the Avenger. I think this was an interesting move that was flawed and could have been executed better. Why get rid of the Avenger if it was technically a better car than the Dart? Also, getting rid of it left a huge hole in the Dodge lineup, because you could either get the compact Dart or the full-size Charger, but there's no more mid-size sedan segment. This makes me think that Dodge sort of screwed themselves and maybe kept the wrong car. The Avenger was selling fine and was on the right track, even beating the Dart in sales for 2013. Once the Dart was released, they chose to stick with that instead, even though it had less power, huge flaws, and a lot of mistakes, as I've talked about in my Dart video. Ultimately, this fear of cannibalization of their own sales is reason number 1. The first generation Chrysler 200, introduced in 2011, shared the platform with the Avenger at the time. So going forward from there, Chrysler had their 200 and Dodge had their Avenger. However, for the second gen 200, which started with the 2015 version, FCA replaced the Avenger base 200 with the Dart instead. So this meant that FCA chose to use the same platform for both the Dart and the 200 instead of the Avenger and the 200 like before. This relates to point number 1, where FCA basically chose to continue with the Dart over the Avenger and built the 200 on that same platform as the Dart as well. There was no point of keeping the Avenger platform around anymore, since FCA could gain economies of scale by sharing costs for the 200 and the Dart on the same platform, and if they had the Avenger, all 3 cars would overlap. So this meant that the Avenger did not get a 2015 refresh and got cancelled instead. The Dart and 200 continued to live on. And the final reason I have to explain the cancellation of the Avenger is lagging sales once again. This isn't really a big reason for the cancellation. I think the first 2 points answer that question better, but it could have been a contributing factor. The Avenger was not selling too poorly in the midsize segment, but FCA thought they could do better with the Dart instead. If we take sales totals from 2007 to 2014 in the United States, which is the 8 model years for the Avenger, sales figures add up to around 541,000 for the Avenger. I took 11 other competitors from the midsize segment, pretty much at random, just to compare their sales figures, and the Avenger only places in 8th place here, ahead of the VW Passat, Buick LaCrosse, Mazda 6, and Subaru Legacy. So the Avenger was lagging behind the other competitors in the segment, and that made it a bit easier for FCA to discontinue it. So there you have it, just a few reasons why the Avenger was cancelled. It was by no means a failure and had many things going for it, with good looks, performance, safety, and fuel economy for the segment. It was never a top-selling car, but the major reason it got cut was due to the release of the Dodge Dart. FCA wanted to put all their eggs in that basket, which I believe turned out to be quite a mistake, and I think the Avenger could have continued at least a few more years. One last interesting point to make is the zombie car that I've mentioned a few times so far. This basically refers to dead cars that still get some sales here and there after they are cancelled. Usually we would stop seeing sales about 1 or 2 years after the car got discontinued, so for the Avenger, when they announced the end of production, there were 42,000 units remaining. This was down to about 1,000 within a year, and most were sold off in 2014 and 2015. By 2015, FCA reported 75 units of inventory left, and that was down to 0 by early 2016. But things get weird if we look at the sales numbers. FCA keeps reporting a few sales here and there of the Avenger, 3 in 2016, 12 in 2017, and 4 in 2018, and they also keep stating different amounts of inventory. So these are sales of a brand new Avenger car with pretty much 0 miles on them, like what you would expect from a brand new car at a dealership. As of July 2017, FCA said that there were 10 more brand new Avengers in their inventory, and in 2018, as you can see on the chart, there were 4 more sold in various months throughout the year. I found this super interesting just because FCA had reported that they had 0 left by early 2016, and then they somehow added more inventory and then reported more sales. Could they be making more of these behind the scenes somewhere, or do they have a lot more new stock left over? FCA was asked to comment on this, but they didn't give an answer, but there are some other possible explanations. This could be due to unwound deals, where the car is sold in just 1 month and then the deal is unwound, or falls through a few days after, or this stock was just never part of the original reported inventory. Just thought that this was some really cool information about the Avenger that not a lot of people might know about. Anyways, that's the end of the video, guys. If you do like this type of video, let me know in the comments section below, and make sure to give some suggestions for what car I should do next. Thanks for watching, make sure to like and subscribe for all your Mopar content, and I'll see you next video.